one tough mom. This is me and this is my mom. Uh, this is a piece entirely about my mom. It's about the aspect of my mother that I think I'm most impressed with, is toughness. I don't mean she was tough like she'd punch you in the mouth, but actually my mom did punch me in the mouth a couple of times. But I mean tough in that a lot of tough things happened to her. And she lived through it, and that's what I admire. It takes toughness to be alive in this world. Like everybody in her generation, she's born in the Great Depression. Sometimes I think everybody in her generation was tougher than my generation anyway. Her dad was a tenant farmer. This is not a picture of her dad, but you see those guys in their overalls and their shirt sleeves. My grandfather, every time I saw him, he was dressed like that. He never owned a bit of land in his entire life. When he died, he was still living in a place with an outhouse. My mom grew up running around with no shoes. I remember she told me in order to go to school, she loved school. School she thought was the way to get out of poverty. And at her school they said, well, you can't come to this school if you don't have shoes. And they had to beg their dad, and he just had no damn money. And he finally managed to get a hold of shoes for all those kids. And my mom was so scared that he said he would never, those shoes better last a couple of years because he wasn't going to get any more shoes. So she'd wear those shoes at school. And as soon as the bell rang and school was out, she'd take those shoes off and put them in a sack and walk home barefoot. Save on shoe leather. She did not want to wear out those shoes. And it was wintertime, and somebody saw her trying to walk home in the snow. And I don't know, all those years later, she still remembered that story. She told me she got raised with a hickory stick. When her dad got mad, she was sent out in the yard to cut a switch, and that's what he used to spank her. She used to get welts on the back of her legs. My mom, she pretty much used the same technique when she was raising me, except I usually used a belt. Oh, this is a gross picture, I know. This is a picture of a carbuncle, kind of like boils. My mom told me when she was a kid, a horrible, huge carbuncle formed behind her ear. She still had the scar all these years later, and she'd have me touch that scar. And she said if it had grown some other way, it would have killed her. It would have paralyzed her, some horrible thing. But she lived through it. And that was what my mom was proud of, living through horrible things. She got out of there and went to God's Bible School in Cincinnati, I think. She was so damn poor. It's amazing to me. I mean, they just had no money. I don't know how she had enough money for this place, but she could barely afford it. She worked in the laundry. I think she worked everything she could in order to pay for it. She told me she did not have enough money for toothpaste and soap and shampoo. And the other girls in the dorm realized that. And one time when she came back to her room, there on her bed was a little sack with shampoo and soap. And, 30, 40 years later when she told me that story, she still cried. She still had tears in her eyes thinking about that present. She couldn't afford textbooks. She read books in the library. Or she'd wait until one of her friends that took the same class finished studying. And, late at night, when the other girls were sleeping, she'd read their textbooks. I'm 21 years old. All her teeth were so rotten, they were all removed. This is not my mom, but you get the idea. My mom didn't really have any teeth. All of her teeth were removed when she was... I don't know what kind of trauma that is when all your teeth are removed. She had dentures. Every night we'd see her with her... We never saw her without her teeth. She'd put her hand over her mouth and... put her dentures in a little glass of water. There's some kind of fizzy stuff in there, sort of like brushing your teeth, I guess. She was a war bride. She got a job as a school teacher, and during the war married my dad. My dad went off to World War II, leaving her behind. She was a school teacher. This is not a picture of my mom, of course, but she was a school teacher. I think she loved being a school teacher. As soon as the war was over, my dad came back, and my mom started having babies. Now, this is kind of an odd thing. This is a state of Iowa birth certificate. My brother and I, we were naughty little boys, and when my mom was not around, we'd root through her stuff in her room, and And we found our birth certificates one time. And I don't know if you can see, but this area of the birth certificate says total other children. And then it says total other children now living. And then total other children now dead. And this one has zeros in that area, but there were numbers on our birth certificates, and that's how we found out that my mom lost as many babies as she had. She had my sister Kay, and she lost a baby, and then she had me, and she had my brother Daryl, and then she lost I think four babies more. This is not my sister Kay, but my sister Kay was born premature with cerebral palsy, mental retardation. She wore braces on her legs like that. And that's the first child my mom had to live. 5 of us lived and 5 of us did not. I think my mom must have got pregnant every year and a half. You see, this is my real sister Kay here. You see she's got a cast on her leg. I don't think the operations did much. She had spastic limbs. And I don't think the operations did any damn good, but it seemed like every couple of years my poor sister had to have another operation. This is the most horrible thing I remember that happened to my mom when I was a kid. My mom was a twin. This is my mom, and this is her brother Bill. And she loved her brother Bill, and he lived down in Missouri. And one time the phone rang in our house, long-distance phone call, with the news that Bill had died. It was a huge shock. He had not even been sick; just a massive heart attack killed him, took him. And my mom screamed, and to this day, I can hear that scream. And I think, in a way, she never did get over that. This picture hung on the wall in my mom's bedroom the rest of her life. My mom got cancer. After all that, she got cancer, and they lived. The doctors pulled her through it, but from that day to the day she died, she called those doctors butchers. She had the way they kept her alive was with a radical mastectomy. She had breast cancer. I know it's kind of a gross picture, but you get the idea. Not the breast is entirely removed, the pectoral muscles, the lymph nodes. One time my brother and I were rooting around in her room and we found a little stack hidden away in a drawer, a little stack of artificial breasts. And that was shocking and I think a little titillating, and we were just kids and sad, very, very sad. She didn't really have chemotherapy as far as I know. She had radiation treatment, and it would leave her terribly ill and weak and nauseous. This is what happens when you have a radical mastectomy. One arm will swell up, and for the rest of her life, that arm would swell up. She would alter her dresses. If she bought a blouse, she would get out the sewing machine and alter it so this arm could fit into the sleeves. If she did any work with that arm, and it was her right arm, so every time she did any kind of work, it would swell up and turn red and give her a lot of pain. It was the age of ironing. Women ironed, and my mom ironed everything. She ironed my dad's handkerchiefs, and she ironed my blue jeans. She ironed the sheets, and her arm would swell up and turn red, and you could see the puckery scars on it, and tears would come rolling down her cheeks. But boy, everything had to be ironed. She had a hysterectomy. I think it was called a preventative hysterectomy, just in case. And that was the end of my mom's pregnancies. She went back to school. She renewed her teaching certificate and got herself a job at Don Bosco High School in Gilbertville, Iowa. Every day she'd drive several miles out of town to that job. Because my mom got that job, we had more money. We paved the driveway. We got a garage. We actually got a TV in the house for the first time. And the big deal for me, I got to go to college because we had enough money, because my mom got this teaching job. Somewhere in there, when I was still in school, junior high, I think my mom had thyroid cancer. And they removed her thyroid gland. I don't know what thyroid glands produce, but my mom would take these little tiny pills. And once in a while, I'd go out in the kitchen, and by the sink, I'd find one of those little pills just sitting there on the counter. And I'd pick it up, and I'd find my mom somewhere in the house, usually curled up in a chair, just looking like she was, going to die. And Mom, you didn't take your pill. And she'd come back to life and take that pill. My mom believed in rapid recoveries. If the doctor said it was going to take 3 months to recover, she would recover in 1 month. She'd push herself. If she was supposed to take 6 pain pills a day, she'd take 1 pill. She hated all medicine. In her older years, she became a power walker. She'd get up every morning at dawn and walk 4 or 5 miles at high speed. One morning, she got up at dawn and she was walking, I don't know, maybe a mile away from our house, and she fell down in the street. I don't know what happened. She tripped on something, and she broke both her arms. I remember her telling me this. This is not my mom, of course, but it gives you the idea. She had no traffic. It was a suburban neighborhood early in the morning. No cars went by. She had to get herself up off the street with broken arms and walk home. And by the time she got home, nobody was there but my dad, and he was so deaf. She was ringing the doorbell with those elbows, but he couldn't even hear her. You can imagine what going to the bathroom was like for quite a while there. Oh, my mom loved it when we'd come home. The kids would come home and we'd bring the grandkids. And one time, one of us came home with a laptop, and that laptop was plugged in. And my mom didn't notice it. She tripped right over the wire. And the result was an artificial hip. The power walking years were coming to an end when this all happened. She used to like to say that old age ain't for sissies. By the time she was in her 80s, she had a heart valve replacement and a bypass. That really took the wind out of her sails. She lived about 5 more years, but it was never the same. She never had the stamina or the energy that she used to have. She insisted on living alone in her house. This is one of the last pictures taken of our entire family. My dad died just about a year after this picture. My dad was already living in a nursing home. He was drifting into dementia. And the rest of us were all, we all had our own families. And that's my sister. It's my sister Kay there. She was in a group home. And my mom, she believed if she lived in a nursing home, she would never get to have moments like this with the whole family and the grandchildren. I mean, how are all you kids and grandchildren going to come visit me in a nursing home? And I think she hated the thought of having to spend all that money for a nursing home. Old age is old age. Every year she got pneumonia in those last years. In the wintertime, at least 3 of the last 4 years she had pneumonia. She managed to get through Christmas usually. We'd all come back and see her and crammed into her little house. But then as soon as the holidays were over, boy, she'd get pneumonia and I'd get a phone call and she'd be back in the hospital. She had a living will, like a lot of people, do not resuscitate. But that last time she was in the hospital with pneumonia, and she got out of her bed and collapsed. And the nurses found her on the floor. She was not breathing, but they managed to detect a heartbeat. And so even though she had this do not resuscitate order, they put her on a ventilator. It was impossible to hear her talk with her mouth blocked like that. The nurses that work in those ICUs can tell what the patients are saying even when their mouths are completely blocked. My mom was saying, I didn't want this. I didn't want this. Let me die. She did die there at the end. I was the last. She was in the hospice wing. She refused to go back into the ICU. I saw her just before she died. I held her hand there in the dark room, and she said, "I love you." That was the last thing that she ever said to me. Wilma Pearl Toops Arms. One tough mom. I love you too.